So, hey, Alanah, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little sick.
A
Excuse the
little
croaky
sick? Oh, I'm sorry to
voice.
hear that.
Yeah,
I
it
had it
happens.
last week. Kids started school a week ago, so it all comes home and through there. So,
True. Makes sense.
right. So VHS Beyond. I have to admit, just off the break, I've been a huge fan of the VHS franchise. Always been a horror fan, but horror anthologies, something about them just always stuck with me. And this one is got a bit of a sci-fi bend to it, right? So looking at the directors and the writers that are on the slate for this, you had the pick of the litter in this one, didn't you? With Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel?
Very biased because they're both very good friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting to work with obviously Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel professionally previously, again, we're just friends.
Mhm.
Um, it's a pleasure. In my opinion, they're both geniuses. But most of the time that I spend with them is we just recently did a watch through of every Terrence Malick movie at Mike's house. He calls
Wow.
his home theater the Flanaplex. And
Of
Mike would
course
write
he
these like,
does.
yeah, it's the best. Mike would write these like 3-page speeches about how the movies were made, and then we sit
Mhm.
there and we watch them. And Terrence Malick's such an interesting director to watch. So yeah, getting to actually work with them on something for the first time was really fun. And pleased to report that Kate Siegel is like just as fun as a director as she seems in every interview she's ever
Mhm.
done. Like she's such a fun person. So it was really like working with a friend because that's what it was. But that's how it felt the whole way through. It was yeah, very lucky to get to
Well,
work with two of them.
and with the subject matter you're dealing with, I think I wrote one word down. I always make like a series of notes for things, for reviews and interviews, and the one I wrote down like 3 or 4 times was just tense, like this entire segment. So essentially you play a character, Haley, that's investigating lights in the Mojave Desert, UFO activity. And I swear the entirety of the thing, from once everything starts getting going, it was like one of those internet jump scare videos where you're just waiting for the person to pop out. And
Yeah.
it was like 20. Thank God it was an anthology short and not a full length, because I might not be here talking to you because I'd be in the
Yes,
hospital with anxiety
success.
issues. It was
Okay, well,
excellent.
we don't want that, but no, I'm very glad. It's funny when you are making these kind of things that like I feel tension while I'm recording a scene, obviously, but the minute that
Mhm.
Kate calls cut, it's gone and someone makes a joke.
Right.
So it's and then when you watch something back that you've made, I traditionally work in game development, and it's the same thing where if you're making a video game and then you're playing it, all you're seeing is the day that you worked on the thing.
Hmm.
So I've just started seeing reviews and talking to people like you. It's like I'm so glad that, that you felt the tension we were going for, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
that the IR really helps with that. Kate was really really wanted to shoot an IR, and because everything looks so bizarre, and you
Hmm.
never really understand fully what the lights you're looking at are doing. I think that that really helps with creating a really tense, just alien atmosphere. That as you're watching it, you just permanently kind of feel unsettled. Which yeah, it looked
Yeah.
very normal on set and so cool on camera.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the IR, because I mean you know, she's been in a number of big things. Obviously, she's married to Mike, so I'm sure he had some input and she's learned from him. But she's got some real natural talent behind the lens. Just little things like the IR you mentioned. Choosing not to show something every time you go to IR has got to be a hard decision to make. Like there were times when your character switches over to IR and you expect to see something pop out, but nothing.
Yeah.
And she seems to be pretty darn good at getting people. There was one scene you had. I had to go back and double check your IMDb to make sure that this was your first like big time film, because there's one scene you have that it's not even in the middle of the tension and everything. It's right after you realize you recorded. I'm trying to make sure I don't spoil anything. Recorded over part of your kid's birthday party, and
Mm.
there's a moment of silence and you just kind of look down and you say, "And what a shitty mother I am," or something along those lines. And I was a powerful 10 seconds of film right there. So where do you remember that scene? And if so, where was your
Yeah.
mind in that silence? Because nothing was
Um,
said, nothing was emoted, but so much was said and emoted at the same time.
that one I was actually one of the ones that I had decided that I was going to do that ahead of time, like before we even got to the day before I spoke to Kate. And then I was thinking about just what it would feel like to have a raised family in effectively a selfish pursuit. I don't feel like what Haley's doing is that selfish, and that she's really trying to redeem herself among people who don't believe in her. And the
Hmm.
thing is that she's right. Um, but it was just a moment of what have I done? is everything I'm doing worth it to effectively throw all of this away? And the weight of that moment just felt like it needed silence. Like it just felt like it needed me thinking. And so
Hmm.
that's what I did. It's like I knew that I was going to do that exactly the way that I did it ahead of time. I don't think we even tried it differently in a different take. Usually, when you're acting, you try a whole bunch of stuff so they could choose one in the edit, but that just felt like the best option there. Um, and I thought about crying, but then that felt like it might be too dramatic and in that at
Hmm.
that point in the movie. So that yeah, that one really just felt natural. It was just that's the real weight of the moment, and I think a big turning point in the movie where she's really making this decision that she's like, nope, I'm going ahead with this. Who
Yeah.
cares? So I think it probably needed the silence as well for the audience to recognize that too, and so I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, no, and I think exactly like you said, I think crime probably would have been too much, and
Yeah,
that you don't have a lot of time. And it's these anthologies again, it's short films, right? So you don't have a lot of time to give your character depth and story. But that one sequence really made you connect with the character and understand kind of much more about who she was. So that was
yeah.
extremely so. The other
There's
thing
some
that
stuff
really
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say there's some stuff that Kate also made the call for. So the opening monologue is just basically information. And when you're getting that information from a character, it can sound like a lot of exposition. Kate directed me to be a little frustrated. It was really windy that day. That day it just
Uh,
happened to be windy. So she was like, be a little frustrated, get some of the lines wrong. And I was like, this is going to feel weird. And it did feel weird when I was doing it. But the way that it turns out, I was like, oh, that's so smart, is that you're immediately also getting an emotional hook. You're not
mhm.
just getting a bunch of information from someone you don't know and you don't know why it matters to them. You're also getting that they're frustrated and that they're impatient. And that was like something that when I was watching it, I was like, oh, you're a genius. Like it worked out perfectly because I wasn't sure how that would look. Again, it felt like a strange thing to do, like to get things wrong on camera feels very
Mhm.
strange. But yeah, it felt like such a smart choice to me because you're immediately getting an emotion from the character rather than just information, which I feel like is a really important way to start. Like you said, it's a short, you don't have a lot of time to convey any
Yeah.
emotion, especially in a horror. Most of what you're going to get is afraid. So yeah, she made a lot of really, really smart decisions like that that I think gives Haley any of the weight that she has in such a small amount of time.
Yeah, it grounds it too. I mean, it really makes it feel found footage real. So, that same scene was actually my next question, and this may come from. I know you've done voices for video games and other things like that, but your nondescript Midwestern American newscaster voice is pitch perfect. Talk to me about
Thank you,
how you
thank you.
found that accent.
It's such a lame answer. Australians are just really good at it. So I'm
Yeah.
Australian, but I've been living in LA or living in California for 10 years. So my accent's like halfway between the two. But like the amount of Aussies who are just really good at American accents, I think is actually because well, the Aussie accent is like halfway between English and American. So there
Hmm.
are a lot of words that we say that are similar anyway. Sometimes in the US, people ask me if I'm from Boston when they first
Oh,
meet me. So honestly, it's just really easy. Like it's
yeah.
just something that I didn't have to train to do. I can just kind of do part of that is just hearing it on TV all the time. There's one word that I got wrong, and I know that I did, but I won't tell anyone because I'm like, if none of you noticed, then great. But I
No,
noticed it.
not at all. And I was actually sitting there, I was like, not only does he, because I knew you were Australian, and I was like, not only does the American accent sound wrong, but the newscaster-ishness of it was on point.
I have
Um,
a running bit where I lean into an American newscaster all the time, and one of the things is like I'm very comfortable on camera. I
uh,
used to be a journalist, which is probably part of why Kate wanted to offer me this role. But I had to try to make Haley seem a little less comfortable on camera because
mhm,
I'm so comfortable speaking to camera. She's not necessarily. So a lot of that was like holding tension in my upper body or making sure that like my movements were sort of stiff because
right.
otherwise I'll just end up seeming like a really casual YouTuber. So that was actually the challenge for me was trying to seem less comfortable on camera or reporting news than I actually am, and that was actually really fun. It was a thing that
Yeah,
I didn't expect to come across as too natural, but you accidentally can when you're talking to a camera. Turns out.
right. And it's probably harder to, lack of a better term, dumb yourself down in your comfortability with the camera than it would be to make yourself feel more comfortable. You can fake
But
being
yeah,
comfortable, but it's hard to do that
totally.
genuinely. Yeah.
It was fun though. A lot of just thinking about where you're putting your body, or like thinking about what people do when they are uncomfortable on camera. I'm sure you talk to people all the time. There are a lot of
Mhm.
people that you can interview that are great at their jobs, but not necessarily as comfortable being interviewed. It's just
Mhm.
like a little bit of watching people and thinking about what you do when you're uncomfortable in other situations. But yeah, it was a challenge I didn't expect. Going into it, I was like, oh, I have to make sure I'm not too comfortable because she wouldn't be as comfortable because she hasn't necessarily done this before. So that was, yeah, that was honestly kind of fun.
So the I'm again I'm trying to tiptoe about spoilers a little bit here, but there's makeup involved in the role at one point. But like I mentioned, it's found footage, and on top of that, it gets a little extra grainy. We'll say at one point. When they're shooting like that, as the actor, do you have to go full bore into the makeup, or are they kind of like doing your appliances and makeup for the quality of video they're shooting? Knowing that, as opposed to going under 6 hours of makeup, knowing you're not really going to be able to see everything clearly, or did they make you go through
That
it
was
all?
all me. It was all me, and
Oh.
we didn't know how much we would or wouldn't see. So because of the timeline of shooting this,
Hmm.
we went full makeup. Um, Part of it was like built into the set. Also trying to be respectful of spoilers. A lot of it was on me, and yeah, like I said, because of the timeline, we didn't know exactly how much of it we would be shooting and what it would look like to fake an important thing that we needed to fake. So
You just grin and
we
bear
prepare
it.
that we prepare that to be able to see everything all the time. But because
Mhm.
of the context of the scene that you're referring to, things are a little floaty. So yeah, it had to be prepared to see as much of it as we can. And there was a day that I had like definitely a little bit physically painful. And I think I was like stuck in a position for about 3 hours that you see for maybe 3 seconds. So I was like, all those bruises, was it worth it? But yeah, you definitely have to prepare for the camera to see everything. You can't really
Yeah.
aim to shoot around it. And then we just kind of figured out what it was going to look like when I was in a position that we needed me to be in. So yeah, the makeup wasn't too bad. The makeup girls were really cool, and we
Mhm.
did the the stuff where I had most of the effects on the day before. I had to do 2 monologues. So to be honest, the whole time that I was in the chair getting my makeup done, I was just rehearsing lines, which actually worked out really great. And everyone
Oh,
on
there
set was so
you
nice.
go.
So yeah, it was like for me, whenever people talk about 6 hours makeup, it sounds so daunting. But I was like, I just sat there and lived my life. So it was great.
Yeah. So obviously you've done a number of things in a short amount of time, and I always do a little research before these interviews, and I thought I knew everything that you were into before, but I missed that you boxed. You're apparently an amazing fighter. You voiced video games, hosting award shows, things like this. Which of those verticals, we'll call them, is where you really see yourself, or is it just you want to be a Renaissance woman and do a bit of it all?
um, the answer is I really just like making stuff with people. Like,
Mhm.
so I don't have a specific answer to that in that I love creative fields. I've been a writer for a very long time. Um, Acting is something I've done a little bit of and am planning to do more of. And it's just, I love working with teams to make something cool. I feel like
Mhm.
if I have a calling in life, it's that. I'm not going to let AI take that away from us. It just is something that makes me feel really fulfilled and I find very inspiring, especially working with people who are way smarter than me, like Mike and Kate.
Yeah.
It's just so inspiring to get to like work with people and see the things they create and help them make that vision. So that applies to game development. That applies to boxing in a way that my coach has been boxing for such a long time. His name's Christo. So experienced. You have a whole team of people when you're boxing who work together to make this like one explosive moment. So even
Mhm.
though it's a combat sport, it's a different thing. It still came from the same place. I did
Yeah.
that in no small part because it was a charity match, but it was also just yeah, I just really, what is life about if not making cool stuff with people you like,
Yeah.
especially if they're people who are smarter than you? Like it's just getting to work with people who are like experts and have all this wealth of knowledge that you would never have is like one of the most inspiring things in the world to me. So I don't. I'm in a very privileged position where I don't have to stick to one particular vocation. It does mean I am always tired because I do too much, but always motivated, and I feel like it's found me more happiness than anything else. It's like, let's just make stuff with cool people. And I highly recommend it.
I love that answer. All right, so horror video game. You have
Mm,
your choice of any horror or sci-fi, because I got, this one's kind of sci-fi band VHSs. So, what are you making? And it can be a takeoff movie, or it can be a brand new thing.
mm. Survival horror is my favorite genre of video game. And
Mhm.
I have the controversial opinion that PT is the best horror game ever made, which is controversial because people who don't know, it's called a playable teaser. It's a really small game, never technically released as a game, has actually been removed, so you can no longer even access it, which is
I
one of my favorite
know.
things about it. I made Kate Siegel play it actually on Twitch, which is awesome.
When I
So much
found
fun.
out that, because it was Kojima that did that, right?
Yes.
When I found out
And
that
Del Toro.
that yeah, I did hear that. So when I found out that the what's the word I'm looking for, the engine or whatever you want to call it, the villain engine, was that she was just always behind you.
I
Like I
know.
was like, that is so simplistically genius. I love it. And I've always wanted
Video
to.
games are a bunch of
Yeah, but
cheats. Like that's
yeah.
they all have to be just a bunch of tricks to like get a play to like the stuff that different devs have to do to make anything work. It's
Oh,
so
it's
cool.
it's been like that since, you know what I saw this morning. Well, I'm just kind of going off on a weird tangent here, but it's been that way from the start. I mean, you see the things they did like with Mario Brothers to
Yeah.
save space, and I was just doom scrolling through Instagram earlier, and somebody had pointed out that the level end song in Mario is just the mushroom growing song slower. So if you play
No
it a lot
way.
faster, it's the same exact song. It's just played
Oh.
at a different tempo.
Man,
So
your
yeah.
Instagram doom scroll is way better than mine. Like I want to get that stuff on there. I guess I do get a lot of dogs. But to come back to the question, if I were to make again, my answer is boring in that I get asked about like what game would you write? The answer is always going to be I want to work with teams of people. It's less about me wanting to make a particular project. I'll make whatever project the people I like are working on. I will
Uh,
say I'm a huge fan of Remedy and everything that they are doing. They just announced a new Alan Wake DLC. Um, so I would say I would love to work with Sam Blake and Remedy in some capacity. Obviously, would love to work with Kojima in some capacity. So like instead of giving you a type of game I would want to work on, I would say I would want to work with one of those two teams. But there's just so much talent in the games industry. It's such a challenging industry. So I'm always excited about the next horror game that comes out.
Nothing wrong with that. So again, the movie was. I've been a huge fan of the VHS franchise. It hasn't really had many stumbling blocks throughout its 12 years now in existence, and this one is
Yeah,
is no exception. It was
I'm
it
so
was a
glad.
lot of fun, and like I said, your segment just tense. That's all I can say. Tense all throughout. Um, and you did amazing work in it. So I really appreciate your time, and it was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.